March 24, 1944. Nicholas Alkemade opened his parachute compartment and found the one object meant to save him already burning. Behind him, a Lancaster bomber was falling through the night. Below him waited 18,000 feet of occupied Germany. Staying inside meant fire. Jumping meant certain death. So the 20-year-old gunner chose the death that seemed faster below him. He turned his turret sideways, pushed himself backward into darkness, and disappeared without the parachute. German investigators later demanded to see. 3 hours later, Alkemade opened his eyes beneath pine trees, surrounded by snow, with every bone in his body still intact. Before that night, Nicholas Alkemade had been a market gardener, not the kind of man newspapers expected to call indestructible. He trained as an air gunner and joined No. 115 Squadron, serving inside the cramped rear turret of Lancaster bombers. By March 1944, he had completed 14 operations, enough to understand that returning safely never made the next flight safer. His aircraft was Lancaster DS-664, nicknamed Werewolf, carrying 7 crewmen from RAF Witchford toward another night raid over Berlin. More than 800 aircraft joined the operation, filling the darkness with engines, navigation lights, and crews following separate routes. Werewolf reached Berlin as planned, but a powerful northern wind pushed returning bombers south toward heavily defended industrial territory. Shortly before midnight, a German Ju-88 night fighter approached from below, where the Lancaster crew struggled to see it. The attack tore through the starboard wing and fuselage, sending flames backward until they streamed around Alkemade's exposed rear turret. The turret's clear panels shattered, leaving him facing freezing air, darkness, and fire racing along the aircraft behind him. Alkemade fired back, but the brief exchange had already damaged Werewolf beyond anything its crew could repair in flight. Pilot James Newman ordered everyone to abandon the aircraft. For most crewmen, that meant clipping on parachutes and finding exits. But Lancaster rear turrets were too cramped for gunners to wear parachute packs while seated behind their 4 machine guns. Alkemade's parachute waited inside a storage container in the rear fuselage, several feet beyond the doors behind his turret. He centered the guns, opened those doors, and discovered flames already consuming the pack before he could reach it. The heat struck his face and wrists. Even his rubber oxygen mask began softening against his mouth and nose. He slammed the doors shut, but burning hydraulic fluid entered the turret and spread across parts of his clothing. Now the aircraft was descending, the parachute was useless, and the small metal compartment around him was becoming an oven. There was no hidden third option. Alkemade could remain inside, or leave the aircraft knowing exactly what waited below. He later said he chose to jump because he believed the fall would end everything more quickly and cleanly. Rotating the turret to one side, he opened the hatch and performed a backward flip into the freezing night. The noise vanished almost immediately. Alkemade heard only distant engines and felt strangely suspended rather than violently falling at all. He looked toward the stars above his feet, thinking mostly about home and the life he would never reach. At some point during the descent, pain, cold, or shock overwhelmed him, and he lost consciousness before reaching the forest. Above him, the damaged Lancaster continued downward and exploded, scattering wreckage far from the place where Alkemade eventually landed. His body struck young pine branches first, bending them repeatedly and removing speed across several layers of the canopy. Below those branches lay roughly 18 inches of snow, protected from sunlight beneath the closely packed trees far below him. Only 20 yards away, the ground was open and almost completely bare, offering nothing that could have softened his impact. Alkemade remained unconscious for approximately 3 hours before waking in silence beneath a hole torn through the snowy pine canopy. The stars were still above him, but now they appeared through branches rather than beyond the open sky so far away. He tested his arms, legs, ribs, and back, expecting terrible damage after such an impossible fall, but found none. Both flying boots had vanished during the fall, likely pulled away as his body crashed through the flexible branches. He had burns and cuts from the aircraft, bruising from the landing, and a badly twisted knee but no broken bones. Unable to walk and exposed to the cold, Alkemade lit a cigarette, studied the clearing, then reached for his whistle. His signal eventually attracted German civilians, who carried him from the forest and arranged treatment at a nearby infirmary. Doctors later removed wooden splinters and pieces of shattered aircraft material while treating the injuries received before his jump. Surviving the fall created a new problem. Nobody believed his explanation of how he had reached the ground that night. During interrogation, German officials demanded to know where he had hidden his parachute and why he refused to reveal it. When Alkemade insisted he never used one, they laughed, suspected deception, and suggested he had buried the missing equipment. He answered with a challenge: find the discarded harness, inspect its straps, and examine the parachute container inside the wreckage. Searchers recovered the harness exactly where he described, with deployment straps still showing during inspection that no parachute had opened. Inside Werewolf's wreckage, investigators also found the ripcord handle and cable still resting afterward inside the burned storage container. The evidence forced German authorities to accept a story that sounded physically impossible even to men examining the proof. They issued a written certificate confirming that Alkemade had descended 18,000 feet without a parachute and survived among snowy fir trees. Among other prisoners, he became an instant celebrity, trading written accounts of his fall for cigarettes from fellow prisoners in captivity. At Stalag 3, another prisoner drew his portrait, preserving the face of the man who had fallen from the sky. His survival remained extraordinary, but the night was not miraculous for everyone aboard Werewolf. 4 crewmen never returned from the mission. 2 other crew members survived after leaving the aircraft, meaning only 3 of the original 7 lived beyond that night. Alkemade later endured the forced winter march from his prison camp as German forces retreated from approaching Soviet troops. He survived that ordeal too, returned to Britain after liberation, and left the Royal Air Force the following year. Physics offers no single magical explanation. Flexible trees extended his stopping distance, while sheltered snow absorbed additional energy beneath him. A later scientific analysis concluded that survival was physically possible, although the exact behavior of every branch remains impossible to reconstruct. Change the trees, the snow depth, his body position, or the landing point, and the same fall ends differently. Nicholas Alkemade did not defeat gravity. For several extraordinary seconds, almost everything beneath him happened in exactly the right order. He died in 1987, decades after the night he expected to live only a few more seconds in the darkness. His story endures because the impossible part was never the fall itself, it was opening his eyes after the fall had ended.